Okay, so we'll start off with the next session. This one is all about infrastructure and power challenges, electricity. Got Bruce Bakey here, who's been a long-time collaborator. I've known Bruce for many, many years, even before OLPC. And he's got all these fun, interesting solar power projects. So, and we're both on Hangout, so I'm going to switch over to Bruce so that he can run the presentation. Let's see. Okay. So, all right, you're on.
All right.
Double check and make sure.
So Bruce Bakey again. For those that don't know me, I've been working in this field now for about the last 8 years and really looking at dealing with infrastructure, internet connectivity, and electricity. And so just as of recently, been talking a lot about, as I go out and look at projects that have had problems, they always underestimate the infrastructure that's in these emerging economies. That the power grid hasn't caught up, the cost of internet access, if you can get it at all, isn't affordable, or it isn't even available at all. But one area that I'd like to talk about is this area of, if there's no electricity, you can't have any type of computer equipment. And so how do we deal with that? Well, I don't know how many of you have seen this map from NASA. It's kind of like a nighttime map, and you can see, the eastern part of the U.S., the western part's lit up, most of Europe. You can see Japan over on the other side, but you've got these other big dark holes, and you can see where from an infrastructure standpoint, there just is no electricity in those regions. And so as we're out doing projects where they're needed the most, we're going to have to deal with these infrastructure projects. So last fall, I kicked off a project to actually do some more in-depth research on this whole topic. There's been a lot of talk about the digital divide and how the lack of internet access is causing this digital divide. And I started looking and researching, and it isn't a digital divide, it's an electricity divide. Because the problem is, is the regions now that don't have internet access are the regions that don't have electricity. And so I started working with two professors, Professor Laura Hosman, who's now down at Cal Poly, and then Professor Laura Army, who's at the Monterey, or the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. And working with Professor Army was actually kind of real critical because she had just come from working at the DoD in the Pentagon. And so we were showing her this NASA information that's about now 15 years old, and she's like, oh, I know a guy that runs the satellites for the US Navy, and we can get up-to-date information on, doing that same type of spectrum analysis of where light is coming from and come up with some good formulas on calculating where there is power and where there isn't. And so, with that data metrics and Professor Hosman's work from a social scientist standpoint, I got those two together to write a paper that's called No Electricity, No Internet, to really show that the problem is that it's a lack of electricity that's causing the digital divide. It's not the lack of internet. And so until we solve that, nothing's going to happen. But one of the other things that came out is that the growth that we're seeing, for example, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, that those growths are outstripping the current grid power systems that are there. And in fact, what came out in this research is that in those developing regions, the grid power, the centralized grid system that we're so used to here, only covers 3% of the population. The other 97% of the population really don't have access to electricity, and that centralized grid system is too expensive to build out to reach out to everyone. And that we really need to start looking at new solutions, such as all this work that's going into microgrids. How do we get these microgrids out into these rural areas so that they aren't left further behind. So this is just some photos that I took the last time I was in Senegal and was just walking the street. And so Senegal's been having the same problem. In Dakar, they've been having, on the average of 8-hour-a-day rolling blackouts because, once again, the economy grew faster than the grid. And with the new building, construction industry, just couldn't keep up. And it's a real shame. You walk down the street and in front of every shop, there's some kind of generator out there, diesel or gasoline. And it's the same way in most of these emerging economies, these fuels are imported, so they're producing electricity at the highest cost point. And if you look at one of these generators, it's polluting more than 100 Prius cars would. And so it's just a shame what's happening in these economies. So typically, as we're looking at deploying these technologies, it's like, oh, well, we can wait for the grid to come. And, unfortunately, what I see a lot of is, oh, we'll put the computer lab in. Oh, by the way, oh, now we need more electricity. Here's a gas generator. Good luck. And, and so if they can't afford to even buy the fuel for that, then they can run their lab. But that really leaves us, we really need to do a lot more with renewable energy. I mean, the good story there, of course, is the cost of solar and solar panels like this have dropped dramatically over the last 10 years to where it's now really becoming a cost-affordable option. So, really where this is leaving us, of course, is there's a study done back in the 90s basically showing that we are, we're nearing the peak of world oil production. And once that production peaks, something's going to have to change, because if we keep going down this path, the predictions are, the population's going to have to collapse because there isn't enough oil to sustain the lifestyle that we've been living, as well as food production and everything else. So, we really need a new direction if we're going to prevent that collapse coming in the future. A recent study just this year from the Sierra Club actually shows a little encouragement, and this is essentially investment going into renewable energies. And here we are at 2014, and what they're really showing is that we're going to see a decrease in grid extension investment and more into microgrids. And for me, the interesting thing here is are these small solar systems, 2 to 10 watts, that are purpose-built to power things, small things in these rural areas. And there'll be a huge growth in these small standalone solar systems. But it'll be interesting to see, the predictions from the Sierra Club, if that really holds true or not. But looking at where we are with oil production, this is the only direction we can really go. So another research that I kicked off this year was I got funding from USAID and from the CPU design firm ARM, which was really to go out and document what are the top ICT for D, the hardware challenges out in the whole industry, and how to make better hardware to go out there. Because as the hardware prices are dropping, and we're seeing more tablets, lower cost equipment, how can that equipment be designed better for the developing world? And so we proposed this study, and so we went out and gathered industry experts and did one-on-one interviews. We did Skype interviews with what are called industry ICT experts, and then we actually went out to practitioners that are operating in the field and offered them an online survey. And so we just published this paper, I think it was 2 months ago, and what we found are those top hardware challenges. And of course, surprise, surprise, power was the #1 issue. That the equipment that's available on the market uses too much. It's not designed properly for these developing markets. You just can't plug it, you just can't directly plug it into a solar system. I mean, I'll pick on my Apple laptop I have here, this runs at, 20 volts, it doesn't make it easy. You know, solar systems either run at 6, 12, 24. It doesn't make it easy. I can't just plug something in directly. Now, like the old PC laptops, you know, of course, they thought of that when they were designing those and designed it to run at 12 volts and put a little software into the charge controller that's in those where you could plug a solar panel in directly. So, you know, there's where the thought was put in what works in the developing world, but most of the laptops and other equipment, the designers aren't thinking that. So we're out doing a kind of a, I'll say, informational campaign with the ARM developer community, you know, because most of these tablets that we see on the market today all have ARM-based processors. Now, how do we influence these people to actually start designing their products better too? You know, look at the power usage, look at the other things that we found that were the top challenges from cost, connectivity, maintenance, and environment. But this paper is free for anyone to download. But really what it pointed out in this paper, in interviewing all these field experts, you know, power is the #1 issue in deploying any type of ICT in the developing market. That you really need care in selecting that equipment that gives the power of what the user needs, but uses as little electricity as possible. And there needs to be more equipment that can be powered with direct current directly off a solar system. So that gets to my other topic that I've been working on, which is, you know, as I have gone out with a lot of these projects, regardless of what the equipment is, you know, funders will come in, they'll get internet connectivity to a project, they'll be funded for a year, but as soon as the funder goes away, everything falls apart. They can't afford to pay for the internet connectivity anymore, they can't afford to pay for the electricity for the project, and it all fails. And in the projects that I visited, they're all saying, well, what's a low-cost solution to get us offline content so we're not relying on this expensive internet connection, and how do we power that? And so that's been one of my personal causes this for 2014 has been how do I address this of the lack of the internet or lack of affordable internet, which are keeping these schools unconnected, and the lack of reliable and what I call clean energy, not relying on a diesel or gas generator, that stops the use of ICT in schools, and how can this topic be addressed? So, the big question is, there's a lot of great educational content that's on the internet, a lot of resources, but if they don't have the internet, how do we get that to them? So is there an effective way to deliver offline content? Is there a way to power this? And is there a solution under $120 that can do that? And so I started working with this little server called Rachel Pi. Rachel stands for Remote Area Community Hotspot for Education and Learning. And this was actually started by a group of Cisco engineers. They had wanted to do a feel-good project. These engineers flew to Ethiopia to put in internet connectivity at the school, only to get there and find out, wow, this is really hard. They don't have electricity. The internet's really bad here, and it's super expensive. What we're trying to do isn't going to help them at all. And so they came back and they said, well, is there a way to take all this great educational content on the internet and package it together? And that's where they came up with this concept of running taking offline content off the internet and putting it on a small server. And so they chose the Raspberry Pi little server, little computer, and by putting a Wi-Fi dongle on it and using the 32 gigabyte SD card with the OS and all the content, produced a small little server that now, for $50 you could deliver this out to a school, and updates could be shipped with new SD cards. And so, but that takes, where I come into the picture is, of course, okay, we solved the internet problem, but now what about the energy problem? How do we power that with a solar panel, one solar panel, or how do we take some of these new low-cost solar panels coming out of China and connect these together and, power these kind of devices? And so, that's where I've put a challenge to my professor friend that's attended this conference before, Professor Laura Hosmans, who's now down at Cal Poly, to actually to figure this out and work with a group of engineering and social science students at Cal Poly to say, okay, here's a solar panel, here's something else. Now, how do we put this in a nice package with the right electronics where we could just set this in a window at a school, and now they don't worry about the electricity, they've got their online content, and essentially every day you can just put this in the window and get enough electricity off of it so that it can, get the voltage it needs to operate and run. So I challenged the students at Cal Poly to come up with this. What's happened along the way is we got the interest of not Raspberry Pi people, but the folks creating this clone called Banana Pi, which is similar to Raspberry Pi, but has a dual-core processor, a gig of RAM, a little bit, but uses about the same amount of energy, and they've donated 55 of these to the project. And we're going to be distributing these out to 50 schools in the Pacific Islands next year after they come up with this integrated design for the solar panel in one of these. So I'm working with, as I said, Professor Hosman at Cal Poly to come up with how do we integrate, whether it's several small solar panels, one large solar panel, what's this end solution going to look like that allows us to have the solution under $120 that we can take out with all the content that comes available on Rachel. Well, as a technologist, this is great stuff to come up with, but the hard part still is all the offline content, and who curates that. This is Bruce Bakey's view of what school students should have for offline content, but I'm not an educator, I'm an engineer. And how do we make sure it is the right content? And so Professor Hosman has actually started working with the University of the South Pacific and their education department there to start defining what those Pacific Island schools will need, and a package of content that's going to be appropriate for them. So I'm glad that there's people smarter than I am in the education front that allow me to just work with the engineers to come up with a package of what this is going to look like, and they can work with what content should go out to those schools. But once again, our target is how do we put this all together for less than $120 and deliver this content out there. If you want to take a look at what that content looks like, I've got this one running, and if you connect to the SSID RPI and point your web browser there, you can actually look at the content live, what's running on here. And so we've actually started distributing some of these out to schools in the Pacific. I was just in Micronesia in August, and we started distributing these with Micronesian-based content out to those schools. What's interesting that's been happening that I didn't realize until late last year, and this is a good example, this school, which doesn't have internet connectivity, the affordability just isn't there for them, had received a donation of tablets. Somebody said, hey, here's 20 tablets you can use at your school, but they just kind of threw them over the fence. So they had this box with these tablets and didn't know what to do with them. And so I'm finding that kind of interesting as we visit more of these schools, that they actually have technology there, but no one's ever helped them with the content or the direction what they should use with the technology. So we've been real active in helping them. What can they use those tablets for? How do we get an easy set of low-cost content to them that's relevant, that makes it look like they're on the internet and gives them that opportunity to learn from that. And so
this is a closed network?
This is a standalone hotspot. And so the user connects to this and they access the contents that's running off the SD card. And if you want to update it, you send the school a new SD card. Now there's a lot of I can point a lot of bad things of what, how does a teacher, update the content? How do they add new content? That whole area of learning management systems and content management, it's not there yet. And, that's the direction I've been trying to work with Professor Hosman. Now let's come up with an easy way for those things to happen, but still first, they've got the technology there. Now how do we get them content that makes that technology actually useful? And content that's relevant to them. Any questions?
Yeah, maybe I missed that part, but what content are you distributing now in all of this?
Yes,
okay.
All of this is what's on running off the SD card. Now in Micronesia, they actually have, what was interesting there is the government actually created a whole series of Micronesian videos that talked about the history of Micronesia from pre-World War I all the way up to the present, up to, they actually have a whole series of videos on social issues, like domestic abuse, etc. And these schools had never even knew these videos existed. And so for Micronesia, we actually are using a 64 gigabyte card because those videos filled up 30 gigs. And that's been the most popular content in those schools because it was very relevant to them.
Congratulations.
So once we finished working with, as I said, we started distributing these, and we kept hitting the energy side of it and having the appropriate content. So as I said, I've challenged the students at Cal Poly to come up with, how do I package the solar panel together with that server and something they could just put in the window of the school and it'll work.
Are you able to power the banana pie with this thing right now?
Yes.
How about those wallets?
No, I need two of these together. Because these are 5 watt, that's a 10 watt. I need at least 7 watts to run it. So 2 of these together can do it. These, I don't know if anyone's seen these have little USB outputs. I've been trying to get the manufacturer to make a 12 watt version of this.
How much they cost each?
These are $20 each.
How do you put them together? Do you do it through a USB?
Yeah, combiner cable.
And, combiner cables aren't just available off the shelf.
Yeah, they are.
And the whole solution, how much it will cost?
Well, we're trying to, our target price is $120 for everything.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great project, and I love solar power. But this will only power the banana pie server while the sun is out. Right?
That is correct.
There's no battery.
That is correct. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible.
Okay.
And I have a question related to that. In general, what I hear about the solar-based solutions are that they tend to depend on the batteries, and how do the technologies behind the current batteries scale in time and in cost? I know this is not applied to this project in particular, but I know you have probably the know-how to respond. Because that's something I always question myself. Maybe, the hardware is getting cheaper, the solar panels are getting cheaper, but what about the batteries? How do they scale in time?
Well, right now, from a solar project standpoint, the batteries haven't. We're still 2 decades behind on the battery technology,
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't caught up. It hasn't kept up with everything else. So, just like the project that the group's here familiar with, that I worked on in Haiti, we did 400 laptop solar installation.
Mm-hmm.
And the batteries are our biggest headache. Maintaining those, the cost of them, etc.
Well, I'd love to browse this content. So when I said is it a closed network, it's not showing now.
Oh, you can't see the
I can see the
SSID?
No.
No?
Let's see. What's the name?
RPI.
No, maybe it's hidden.
No, it's not. It shouldn't be. Let's see. I see it.
Maybe a demo.
Oh, no, you're right. It isn't showing up anymore. What did I do?
Broken.
Maybe shy.
Let's restart it. Maybe I unplugged it.
So Bruce, have you seen those videos by the company that makes those robots, robots?
Yes.
They go vacuum cleaners, but they have these videos about the, I guess, the military side of it.
Mhm.
And they have these, they'll have a little robot, very ruggedized with a camera or something, and they'll show like, some guy grabs this thing and just throws it into a building, just like that. It lands in there and then rolls around and starts to do what it's doing. And I always thought that if you had something super ruggedized like that, where you've got a panel on either side and you've got all the machinery inside, the server, what have you, with the built-in Wi-Fi, it should be just one unit. It should be like that, where you can just toss it onto somebody's, thatched roof and walk away, and it should be able to just sort of do its thing. But the challenge that I find is that, that there are lots of these projects here. So this is one Rachel. OBC has a school server that's been going on for years. There is Internet in a Box. That's an independent project. There is Rick. There are a whole bunch of other ones. But eventually, it just comes down to that execution, which is when you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you can't even look up something because you have no connectivity. You got to have this thing where it's just ready to go.
And that's the goal. That's why I kind of like these, where the panels. What I'm envisioning is taking a larger panel that can power this, having the Raspberry or Banana Pi built into this rubberized thing, and everything's connected, and they just put it in the window or up on the roof, and it's going to work.
So that's what was the web address again?
It was 68.10.1.
Yes.
And then besides the advantage of ease of use, ease of use obviously lends itself to people actually using it. But even beyond that, I've seen solar installations in really rural areas where what ends up happening is that as soon as people realize, oh, I can charge my phone here, or oh, I can hook up a TV to this car battery, or whatever, then the intended use falls apart.
Well, and
so
that,
that's one of the nice
right.
things about making it.
And our project in Haiti had that same problem in what we call that energy diversion.
Yeah.
Where the first one we did there, we put the typical installation, solar panel, battery, an inverter, distributed at 120 AC, and 3 months later they said, oh, the solar system is crap, it doesn't work, and there's no power to run the lab anymore, and blah blah blah. Well, we went back down. The batteries are fine, everything was fine, and we couldn't figure out why why the batteries are dead every day. Well, the woman that cooks the meals for the teachers found an old refrigerator that she put in the back of the kitchen, and after everybody left during the day, she would take an extension cord out and go plug her refrigerator in. And then before everybody showed up in the morning, she would show up and unplug it, and it would save her from hauling the food back and forth from wherever she kept it, because it'd be there cool already at the school.
It seems like the ideal. It seems like the ideal would be, and I'm not an electrical engineer, I don't know how this would work, but to act like for something like this, the idea that you could charge your phone on it as a teacher, but you could somehow allocate, you can have whatever power is left over after this thing has what it needs.
Well, the second,
and then that creates an incentive to hook it up.
right? Well,
just charge your phone, and then everybody has access to it.
Well, the second one we did was the large one with 400 laptops, and we did that all DC current, so there was no way to do energy diversion. And we put a cell phone charging station there. And the school actually cut that off because the students started bringing their parents' cell phones, and the parents then would show up at all different hours in the day trying to find their kid to get their cell phone. And so they cut it off just for staff at that point. But some enterprising students figured out they could charge other people, and so there's kids coming to school with 20 phones. So.
I'm not a big fan of diesel myself, actually. Thermal energy and gallon of diesel is like quite a bit. I was just thinking, if you researched on building like some sort of portable diesel generator,
Well, the problem I have, one is the pollution, and second, in places like Chuuk, Micronesia, a gallon of diesel is $36.
Yeah.
Because by the time it gets to those remote islands, it's not affordable.
Yeah, but the amount of thermal energy is like just astronomical compared to the solar.
But people have to be able to afford to buy it.
Yeah.
That's the issue. I'm not arguing its thermal value. I'm just saying people can't afford it. With that, the other challenge that I have going on right now is taking 12 of these banana pies and building them into a cluster, and solar powering this cluster as a larger micro kind of data center. And I've received the funds from ARM to run a challenge, and so we're about to launch a $10,000 challenge to come up with the housing that is rugged enough to go into a developing world, the solar system to power it, and the best design that is going to get this $10,000 prize. So we're going to launch that later this month. And so we're really excited about doing that, and how do we take this very low-cost technology and scale it up for larger projects.
So the data, so when you say a data center,
well, I called it a micro data center. You could really think of it as, we have these blade servers now today that have like 12 blades in them. Well, essentially that's what we're going to do, is make this into a big blade server that can handle the needs of in a region where there is no internet connectivity, but they have, one of these little Raspberry Pis or banana pies is not enough at a larger school. And how do we actually create, a very ruggedized micro server that can be solar powered, that can work in a larger environment.
and the actual data is on a separate, is that a?
Yeah, it runs off the solid state drive.
Solid state.
So can you describe large and small for me? What is
Well,
a
this-
larger school? and
Well,
what
one
is-
of these supports like 20 users, and this would support, two to 400.
Because our rollout is 30.
Right.
So if we were wanting to use this technology, we would get to.
Yeah.
And then we would have room to grow. And then we'd wait for what you guys do there, and then you would bring that whole thing.
Well, if you have a group that big.
Of course. Of course we will.
But they would, they divide their group up into two groups, and one for each of two Raspberry
Right.
Pis.
Well, yeah, a certain group of machines would be assigned to Raspberry A. And
Exactly.
okay.
The next thing, and this is, I think, the controversial topic that was presented earlier. We've been doing a lot of projects regarding tablets. And so the biggest thing we've learned with tablets is not what tablet you put out there, it's the ruggedized case that you put on them. And so this is the case that we've ended up, so we've put now almost 3,000 tablets out into places like Kenya, Haiti, and the Philippines, and these, it's the case that's made the difference for the ones that have lasted. We've also been doing testings, like in Haiti now, they're making their own tablet. And, the government's now saying, oh, no, you can't bring tablets, you have to use what we're manufacturing in Haiti. But, we're not really excited about this because they used a non-standard size power plug, so you have to buy the plug from them. You just can't use a regular USB, micro USB like every other tablet uses. Little things like that are kind of like, really? You couldn't do that right? So, so here's the case. It's called the gumdrop case. I'll pass it around. And
Is that a Nexus 7?
yeah, that's a Nexus 7. And here's the Haiti one they're assembling now in Haiti. So let's see. How do I share a web browser?
And who makes the case? Is that just,
It's called a company called Gumdrop.
just Amazon.com,
Yeah.
Gumdrop?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just open it up and show.
So this is not a micro USB charger plug here?
So, oops, field open page. Oh, did I lose it?
I think we lost you. Let's add you back on.
How do I?
Just hit join hangout again.
Oh, you know why? I'm connected to the Raspberry Pi. So I messed up. Sorry. Not my mistake. That's what. Yeah, it's cool.
Oh, that's the charger.
Get it back on.
Share.
The probably charges there.
Yeah.
It's not sharing.
We have it here. So it's going out the stream, but you may have to drag it over across to you.
Oh yeah, they're going. Okay.
Well, we have it here, so.
All right.
Actually, it went away. That's fine, go ahead.
It's going to be a challenge here. So one of the tablet projects we did was right after we've used an open source tool to track usage on the tablets. And there's a product that Meraki came out with, and fortunately, since Cisco bought them, they're still not charging for this, but it's a cloud-based tool that we can track tablets and where they're at and what they're being used for. And so we put this on all the equipment that we send out. And in this case, this was our project we did with the United Methodist Church after the typhoon in the Philippines. And the problem was all these aid workers were trying to go out to help, but they didn't know what streets were. They didn't have any accurate street maps. So we worked with OpenStreetMap, got current maps on all these tablets and handed them out to all the aid workers that were on the ground trying to do recovery work for the typhoons. So like Mercy Corps, Save the Children, SOS Children's Village, etc., and the United Methodist people that were out there trying to solve that. But just to give you an example, some of the data that we look at, such as, here I can look at who's got the laptop and where it is, and I can actually, of these tablets that, there's my mouse here. Where'd it go?
It's flying back and forth.
Yeah.
There it is. Oh.
Oops. Oh, there we go. So I can look at a map and say, okay, of these tablets we distributed for the earthquake relief, where are they now? And so here you can see some have ended up back in the U.S. There's still a lot in the Philippines, but some have ended up in Indonesia, some in China. There's some in the Middle East, in Canada. So a lot of the aid workers we can see have taken those back with them. But what's interesting for us is to look at things like if we look at the one in Indonesia, we can look at what they've been using the tablet for since then. We can look at aggregated data, such as the software that's on all of these. So we've got 51 clients we're tracking, and we can look at, okay, what application are they using, what content are they using, etc., and see what application's been downloaded the most. Somebody using 3D City Zombie Run, whatever that is.
Or 18 wheels truck parking. Somebody's
Are they aware of this?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So how do you handle privacy in this situation?
Well, we told them that we were going to track usage. So like here, Facebook's been installed on 22 of them. The latest map of the area was installed 44 times. They've done updates to the system manager, the Adobe Reader. Mm-hmm. So we can look at what content they put on, what content they're using, what applications they're using. Are they using it for maps? Are they using it for Candy Crunch? What are they using the tablet for?
You go to page 15. Just
Pardon?
we need to see one more page.
I think this is the last page.
So page 15.
11.
Yeah, this is the last page.
We'll go to the previous one.
Step back.
Oh, step back one?
Plants versus zombies too.
And, well, like Candy Crunch is a big one. So with this,
Some weeks and
Also, can you put that remote desktop?
Nursery rhyme.
So, what we can do with this tool that we've tailored it to do is we can actually force updates. We can go and say, okay, here's a new version of this software. We can actually force it remotely once they get internet connectivity. We can look at individual users. As I said, this is the kind of work that we do with teachers to take a look at what content are they using the most, what applications have they downloaded. I can see the last application they used here was Skype on October 15th.
And what about usage? This is tracking the
application and the content that they're using off of this.
But does it make like a kind of a journal of the things
Yes.
they open and?
Yeah. So just as an example of the tool that we're using, and I said this was a relief. When we use it for schools, we only look at what teachers do, not what the kids are doing. And we look at it from the teacher standpoint to, okay, what application are we look at the performing teachers, the ones that are really using technology well, what applications are they using, what content are they using, and then we redo our training for the other teachers based off the information we get off of this tool.
This is open source?
Yes. And so, what's interesting for me is, with these, is I actually have one that's ended up in Cuba. How did one of these tablets end up in Cuba? I don't know. But it's just interesting to see, they all went to the Philippines, distributed to aid workers, and where they... Yes. So the good thing with this tool, once again, is it's free. And Meraki's providing this cloud-based for this. And the tool actually runs on Windows, it runs on iPhones, it runs on a lot of different operating systems. We've only been using it on Android tablets. But it gives us that, from our view, a way to tailor our training better for the projects. And go back and look and see how are these devices actually being used. With this one, like you said, I know people are concerned, well, there's privacy issues, but when we gave these out, we said, okay, these are for, disaster relief. We're going to track what happens to them, and it's just surprising a lot. These people haven't figured out how to delete that tracker. And we also
how many did you give out total versus?
We gave out 50 on the ground, and then one of them we still have it back in our shop. So that's why the total clients here is 51.
The only issue with the scale, right? You need to track thousands of.
Well, like our tablet project with teachers in Kenya, we've got just under 3,000 we're tracking, and those are tablets only for teachers. So that's the largest one we're tracking so far, is just under 3,000.
So you must have 30 as many for the pupils.
Well, in Kenya, only the teachers have the tablets. The project there was to give technology to the teachers first, get them comfortable using it for the first 2 years, and then they're going to look at giving technology to the students.
What will you get them? For the students, what device will you get them?
Well, that's USAID is funding that project. That's up to USAID to decide. So I don't know what they're going to choose. For the teachers, they were given Nexus 7s. I know that the project team is looking at some Samsung tablets because they're available in market, where the Nexus are not available in the local market. So they're looking at what can you buy from a local vendor that can be supported in country. At that time we started this, we couldn't find a good distributor in country, and so we brought these in.
So they're not
for the
listening to
teachers.
local.
What?
You're not listening to local.
Okay, any questions on this part? So this is a tool that we're using to track the technology and see how it's being used. Okay, thank you.
Just for your projects, say, the content on the